Welcome to the Beer Connoisseur, Beer Buyers Club, and Gourmet Brewing's new live stream and podcast. This new collaboration will provide amazing opportunities to hear from great brewers talk about their really awesome beer. I'm your host, Doug Piper, and I want you to know how much I appreciate you allowing me to join you in growing our beverage skills together. I'm a certified Cicerone and a certified BJCP beer and mead judge, and I'm continuing to work on advanced ranks. Each week, we'll do another brewer-led guided tasting from a selection of the previous week's Beer Buyers Club offering, which will conveniently arrive in your mail well in time for the live stream. Now, there are a few other ways to get this beer this fresh from breweries from all over the country, combined with the opportunity to hear and ask questions from the very brewer who brewed it. So it looks like we've got a bunch of folks there in the chat. I see Hop Barley there again, and I'm glad to see you, Hop. You've been there a lot. Henry's been there a lot. So we're really looking forward and appreciate everybody being there. Now, from what I can tell, my video is rather pixelated, so I apologize for that, but hopefully the audio is holding up. So we will move on from that. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with gourmet brewing, we provide content related to brewing and enjoying the very best in fine beverages. Please click the green follow button to be notified of new live stream events and help draw more speakers. This really does help, so take a moment to do that if at all possible. The Beer Connoisseur is one of the highest read and most trusted sources of beer knowledge worldwide with over 8 million readers. The Beer Buyers Club provides an opportunity to buy highly rated and sought-after beers through Tavour. And Tavour is spelled T-A-V-O-U-R. Now, the Tavour app is available in both Apple and Android versions and allows members to purchase these unique beers, which are then delivered to your home. Hopefully, your state is one of the 24 that Tavour can ship to. We'll put that link in the chat, and there'll also be a special offer at the end of the program. Before we move into the main presentation, there are a few quick logistical items I'd like to go through. And in this case, it looks like, again, I know my screen looks like it's pretty pixelated. So you may not need to adjust your screen, but if you do have issues, refreshing your browser works an amazing most of the time. And also there is a gear in the bottom right-hand corner that you can click on. And this gear will enable you to choose a lower resolution. So do that if things are looking especially pixelated. But I think at the moment, from what I can tell, the pixelation is on my end and not on yours. We're going to taste these beers in order of their alcohol content. And so I want to get these under the overhead camera right quick, and we will talk about them just a minute. So we're going to start out with the straw barb, which I'm really looking forward to because, well, first of all, I've already had one and it is delicious. It is a very nice strawberry sour with a nice blend in it, but we're not going to get into a lot of those details because you're going to hear those from the brewer themselves. And then we're going to hear about the Hopatronic, which is a double IPA with some Citra hops in it. Very nice beer. So let me switch back to our main camera here. So the Strawberry Barb comes from Brewery Vivant. It's a 5% ABV strawberry rhubarb sour, which is blended with fruited farmhouse ale and wood-aged sour ale. It's a 4.16 out of 5 on Untappd. And River North has their Hopatronic, which is an 8.4% ABV New England double IPA. And it has a hop blend, which is heavy in Citra, but it has a pink boots blend. And we're going to hear more about that from Derek in the second part of the program. So I want to bring up our brewers now. and make sure we can hear them. And hopefully they are a lot clearer than I am. And from what I could tell on my screen, it looks like it is. So I can't wait to open these beers. But first of all, I want to introduce you to the brewers who created them. So the first one we want to talk to is Derek Goodman. And Derek Goodman started as a home brewer, and in 2009 he moved to Breckenridge Brewery and started on a bottling and canning line, eventually moved to cellaring and then filtering before taking on the brewing position at River North Brewery in 2013. He's been in charge of brewing operations since, and he has a true passion, like many brewers, for pale lagers, IPA, and barrel-aged strong ales. I want to move to Jason Spaulding. Jason is the CEO and founder of Brewery Vivant, and he has the newly opened broadleaf local beer in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Jason's been in craft beer world since the late 90s when he co-founded New Holland Brewing Company before leaving to open Brewery Vivant with his wife and his partner, Chris. Vivant was the first LEED certified brewery in the U.S. So I guess actually, Jason, did you get yours before Sierra Nevada and Mills River?
Yeah, when we opened in 2010, we started going down this path that was in our business plan. My wife is a big proponent of sustainability. She's been a speaker at CBC and sat on their sustainability board as well. But, it's something really important to us. And when we got that LEED certification, we started calling around our other kind of environmentally friendly friends and found out like no one had actually gone through the process to get LEED certified, even like great companies like New Belgium and people kind of leading, but in sustainability, but no one had actually got the certification. So when we actually got it, it took us calling around first to find out that no one else actually had done it yet. So we kind of backed our way into being the first. So it was kind of cool. But since then, there's been quite a few.
And Derek, we're not going to talk about your barrel age, but I just love barrel aged beers. So you've got a nice barrel age program?
Yeah, that's something we're really into here. And if people keep buying it, we'll definitely keep filling the barrels. And, now's the time, especially we just haven't had enough time to fill barrels so much with our other, especially with the summer schedule coming up. But now we've been able to add an extra, 2 dozen or so through these sort of slower times. So a positive that's come from that.
Well, we're not going to open all the beers at the same time. And because yours has got about half again the alcohol in it as Jason's, we're going to actually start with Jason's beer and get yours next. So I'm going to take you off screen for just a few minutes. You can hang around, can't you?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll be here.
Counting on it. We'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Well, I want to look at the label first because this is quite an elaborate label that you've got here. I mean, it actually has some relief to it, Jason.
Yeah, we've got a in-house designer that we just kind of let him run with things, but he does a really nice job and does a lot of he's done some photography in the past, but he's done a nice job with putting all these things together. And this is part of our unapologetic fruit series. So there's a few that we have throughout the year. Strawberry rhubarb happens to be the one that we've been making the longest. It's kind of evolved over time, but we're trying to make, we set out to can we make the best fruit beer anyone's ever had? I mean, that's the goal we've had. And, that's always, of course, up to people to decide, but we put our best foot forward. And, these are a flavor combo that we really love and, just had to have fun with the label too.
Well, that is a phenomenal label. And I love the way it looks. So nice job on that. So I'm ready to pour mine. Looks like you're pouring yours.
I'm pouring mine. I happen to be really thirsty right now. Had a long day of work.
Well, tell us about it while I'm trying to do a nice pour.
Well, so with these fruit beers, like our goal was to really, unapologetic fruit. We want that fruit to be really up front and really forward. So there is a ton of fruit in here. It does settle out. So when you get to the bottom of that can, there's probably some sediment. Obviously, you've decanted yours. I've decanted mine. That's how I prefer it. Some people like to swirl and dump it in there. And there's just so much fruit in it, and fruit's heavy that that's part of the process. I like a little cleaner beer like this, so I like to let mine settle a little bit. But big upfront fruit flavor. Like if you can't get the fruit out of this, like your taste buds have something wrong with them, I think. But that's kind of how we wanted to move forward with this style of beer. Like we do other fruited styles of beer, but this is really upfront, really forward with the fruit.
And the color is phenomenal. Not quite the same red as the can, almost a kind of a dark strawberry, but just gorgeous. And it had a nice head that held up there maybe half a finger for almost a minute.
Yeah, it's when you get into beers like this, it's really hard to hold on to the head of that beer. And I can talk a little bit about the process of that and some of those challenges we have. But there's trade-offs for everything when you're making a beer. And for us, we wanted to make a beer that was a little more stable in the can. And I love all the new things going on with beer and, these slushy beers and things like that. They're amazing and wonderful. Like ours is not that. They may have similar flavors, but we really try to make ours stable in the can where you don't have to put a message on there that it may explode. So, and I get into some of that process here in a minute.
Now, Jason, you're calling this a sour, but it's not very sour. Matter of fact, I don't get any lactic aromas. All I get is just like a bowl of strawberries.
Yeah. What's fun about the sour component is it really brings some of that fruit out. So like if you were to do the same beer without a sour component in the beer, it wouldn't taste as fruity. But that sour part, if you eat fruit on its own, you get the sweetness and then a lot of times you get some acidity from just eating the raw fruit. And that's what we wanted to replicate in this beer. We have done in the past, we've done this beer with a straight sour beer. This is actually an evolution that we've come to try to get these beers in a can and really try to focus in on that fruit part. So what we've done is we've taken our traditional sour beer that we do, the old fashioned long way, letting it age we actually age some in stainless, we age some in wood, we blend those together, and then we also layer in fresh beer, and that's how we're able to get it to taste the way we have it tasting, and also in a package that people wanted in cans. Like we used to sell this beer in bottles, and it was straight sour beer. So we've got some fans that like that better, some that like this better, but this is a way that we can get it in a can and get it out there to people a little wider scale.
It seems like it's just a touch sweet, but it really doesn't finish sweet. Is it just enough bitterness there to kind of balance out the sweetness? It's interesting. I mean, and the tartness is just enough like a ripe strawberry. It's not like a not quite ripe strawberry, which really is tart. This is just like a ripe strawberry.
Yeah, so I really think it's that sour component. And, if you were to, we've tried sour kettling before, and it just turns out like we're awful at making kettle sour beers. But what we're really good at is making sour beers in wood and we have a house culture, and we've actually started doing that in stainless also. But we're better at that. And I think it gives you a truer, sour component. If you drink a slow sour beer versus a quick sour beer, it's really hard to explain in words, but you can really tell the difference. I think that aspect blends into this beer really, really well and adds to the fruit and really brings that out. and they kind of sing together, I think. But I think with that sour backbone in there, that makes the fruit flavors really come out.
Well, and now I'm not getting a lot of wood. There might be a tad of vanilla in it, but you've kind of minimized the barrel characteristic from what I can tell.
Yeah, and this is a blend out of our foeder. So we have a big 40 barrel foeder, and you don't really get much vanilla and stuff out of that. It's a 50-year-old tank as it is, so it's been around for a long time. But it houses our house bugs in it, which is nice. But you don't really get those vanilla characters and things like that you might get out of a newer wood barrel.
Well, I'm quite impressed. As you heard when I started, I have had a lot of strawberry beers that had strawberry on the label, but I'd be hard pressed to call them strawberry. I mean, this looks like strawberry color. It has strawberry aroma, and it definitely has strawberry flavor. I guess what made you decide to put sour on the label? I'm not sure I would have. The pH is just not that low. What is it? Maybe 4?
Well, what's interesting is once it's all blended together, I actually don't know what the pH is. I know what the pH is of the beer before we blended it, but the finished product, I actually don't know what the final pH is. But when we look at our sour beer that we're blending in, that's it's actually pretty sour. It's in the maybe 3.5 pH. But then when you blend it with a fresh beer and you combine all this aspect together, it kind of changes. I'm not quite sure where that sits at the moment, to be honest with you. That's
well, when I say sour, I expect a lactic character in the aroma, and which I guess depending on the beer is not necessarily always desirable to me. Yeah, but this is just all strawberry in the aroma. A little malt. Strawberry, maybe a tad of vanilla. Very nicely done. I'm quite impressed. Probably the best strawberry beer I've ever had.
Yeah,
and it looks like that color is phenomenal.
And it's kind of fun because we've done a beer. We used to call this beer strawberry rhubarb sour, and it was in a bottle. This is the first time it's been released in a can. So we shorten the name and call it Strawbarb. And if you look at Untappd, you can see the previous rankings and whatever. It's actually, since we've done the Tavour release, our score has actually gone up quite a bit with this batch because it kind of went out. Tavour is amazing because we shipped it to them a week after we packaged it, and they had it in people's hands the next week. So within 2 weeks of us making this beer, people had it in their hands, which is kind of amazing. But we've been kind of watching the score. It's actually gone up. It's like 4.2 something. It's probably our highest rated beer that we have, which is kind of cool. So we're really proud of it. And, we have a big tradition of making sour, traditional sour beers. And, we're the kind of beer geeks that really like, we'll drink a straight up sour beer, no fruit and anything, but those don't appeal to the public as much. But that's kind of where our passion is. So we've been kind of honing that in over the years, and now kind of taking that expertise and knowledge and kind of figuring out how to really blend it into a fruit beer. And that's what this whole Unapologetic Fruit series is all about. And this year we're really kind of focusing on like these Midwest flavors, pies and jams that we've grown up, combinations we've grown up eating and that mean something to us. And, this one was really exciting. The next one in the series is a cherry apricot, which will kind of have a similar look and similar taste as well, but just kind of, honing in on some, some stone fruits.
Well, Chris says you're at 4.24 now on Untappd.
Oh, nice.
So it looks like it's going up.
All right.
Well, cool. Very nicely done. And again, for those of you that maybe have joined us late, it looks like my internet has blown out. But fortunately, our brewers seem to be in great shape. And so we're going to go ahead and we will continue on. So you won't miss me at all. All right. So, Jason, what I want to do is move to a couple of questions next. Is that good?
Sure.
And we
good.
also want to bring Derek back on screen while we go through the questions. So,
Okay.
Derek, that's a heads up that you're about to have your camera turned on, buddy, and your mic.
All right, perfect.
Oh, hopefully, it didn't catch you with anything embarrassing.
No, surprisingly.
Okay. So what we're going to do is, Jason, we're going to take a couple of questions for you on your beer. And if there's something, Derek, you want to weigh in on, we can do that too. And then we'll come to your beer next.
Yeah, no, that sounds great. Man, that beer sounded good. Strawberries have been just so hard for us to work with over history compared to, cherries or raspberries. I'm really excited to.
Blueberries is another one that's hard. It's hard to pull off.
Oh man, that just comes off.
Beer.
Yeah, just acidic. Yeah, we just.
Yeah, we're just kind of getting musty on us, but
really,
these are all fruits that grow in Michigan that we're really trying to figure out how to play those up.
Cool.
Awesome. So Jason, the most popular question in the group so far, and by the way, pop your questions in there for Jason if you'd like. This is probably the first rhubarb beer I've ever had, and this is speaking of the strawberry barb. What special brewing techniques are required to work with rhubarb?
Well, rhubarb, like I've grown up with rhubarb, so it's not that foreign. It's just something that we have here in Michigan, and for us, it's it grows in a stalk. My wife and I have a huge garden of rhubarb, and it's just kind of the strawberry rhubarb is a great combination, and people make pies all around the country, but here in Michigan, it's in the Midwest, it's a real special thing because we have such harsh winters that when spring comes, this is like one of the first crops that comes out. And it's kind of like a welcoming of getting past winter, welcoming of spring. And so it's kind of fun. And then, brewing with rhubarb, we've done all sorts of different methods. The original plan was to use the rhubarb in our garden to make a rhubarb beer. But one of the things we wanted to do, and we kind of moved away from it, is, when you use, fresh rhubarb stalks, one thing that happens is, we can't get the beer out when people are thinking of strawberry rhubarb. It would come out, month or two after because we'd crop it now. And if we used fresh rhubarb from our garden, this beer wouldn't come out until June, July, and people are already kind of past thinking about it. So we've changed our method up a little bit. When we first did it with, stalks from a garden or whatever, it soaks it all up, and you get just so much pulp in the bottom of your tank and so much loss. But it does give a nice flavor, but it's real, it's a real sour, real sour component. So it kind of needs something kind of sweet to play off of it. So that's where that strawberry rhubarb combination has been so popular, through time and pies and baking and all sorts of things. But working with those fruits, it's we've moved more to a processed rhubarb than doing fresh rhubarb, and we've tried it all, but we get much better results that way. And one thing it's nice, it's rhubarb from Michigan, but we get it in a what do they call it, frozen QTF? No, what is that? It comes frozen and it's the previous year's bat or crop, and it's much easier for us to work with.
Okay. All right. We'll move on to the next question. Jason, what's the best way for me to keep my straw barb for maximum flavor? Should I be concerned about any unfermented sugars?
So, I had mentioned, I'm kind of an old school brewer. I've been in the business for a long time, and it's really hard for me. I love kind of the new blood coming in and pushing these envelopes of what beer is, hazy IPAs. I get excited, if I get to learn about new things. The slushy beers, I've tried a couple, but it does leave me troubled thinking that you're putting beer in people's hands that may explode. So we've really taken a different approach with our beer. This is not a beer to age, but you don't have to worry about it, blowing up on you either. What we do in our methods is, we basically sterile filter this sour component, and we blend it with the fresh beer. So you're basically steriling out anything that could re-ferment those sugars. So for us, it's a more stable product. Like I would not recommend like leaving this still like in the hot sun in your kitchen or something like that. But, something that you could, 6 months, probably no problem, keep it in your fridge, you'd be fine. But it's really meant to be drank fresh, but it's not going to re-ferment in the can. We have had issues of that in the past. Actually, last year, our bottled product, we had some foaming problems because what happened is that wild bacteria started, going crazy on the fruit that we put in there, and we did have some gushing happen. So we learned some tough lessons along the way, but we're really happy the way this turned out, and trying to make all these things happen at the same time. A shelf stable, really fruity beer. It's been quite a process, but we're pretty happy with where we are now. So.
Chris says, "What's wrong with a little bit of pyrotechnics?"
Yeah. If you search some Facebook videos, you can see what happened. I posted a video of an erupting bottle last year that we had. They never exploded, but you open them up and they just like. So if you get bored, search for that. I'm sure it's on there still.
But you're saying there's nothing to worry about with this guy?
No, because we sterile filtered the beer component before we added the fruit. Now we added the fruit after that sterile component, so it remained really fruity. But that's also kind of why there's not a big head on it, because when you do that, that's one of the things you sacrifice a little bit. Is it thins the beer out a bit, so you don't get that lacing in the head. Yet the trade-off is that your can's not going to explode. So we thought that'd be better.
I wanted to go back. So you said there might be a little sediment in the bottom of the can. So if I pour it in there, do you recommend I do that, or should I leave?
Let's try it. Let's try it. I'm going to see what my can looks like. But
all right. I don't know if my pixelization looks like it's pretty bad, so I don't know if anybody will be able to see it. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this off. No, good. Okay. It kind of depends. I mean, that fruit's so heavy. Sometimes it kind of happens it depends on when in the canning that particular can came from. Sometimes there's a little more sediment than others. It's just really hard to control to get that uniformity. Yeah, I will have to say one of the other ones that you sent me did have a fair bit of sediment in the bottom. It was pretty cloudy.
Yeah, when you get that, it gets really dark. It gets really dark.
It was almost like a dark pink.
Yeah, but still so fruity, and it's just fruit puree at the bottom.
Well, it tasted delicious. So other than it not being quite as beautifully clear as this one is, it was phenomenal. So as far as I'm concerned, you shouldn't waste it.
Yeah, I think drink it. It's all good stuff.
Okay, just a couple more questions, and then we're going to move to Derek. So, Jason, here we go. Brewers tell me that strawberries are difficult to brew with because they have to remove the green tops. Is that true? And roughly what percentage of fruit to beer is in the straw barb can? And I can explain that. When I was talking to one mead maker on his fruited meads, he said that 40% of that volume was fruit, if I could envision his bottle. And he said at one point, 40% of that volume was fruit in order to get that fruit characteristic. Now, how much fruit would you speculate is in this strawberry?
To get to exact terms, I think it's probably a shit ton. It would be the technical term for that. But yeah, that's one of those kind of secrets we have. It's not really a secret, but we put as much fruit as we possibly can in the beer. But it's not something I guess I'm ready to put out there how, exactly
it's
how
a
that
lot of
process looks
fruit
like.
is what I hear.
It's a lot of fruit.
Well, and I'm really just trying to let people appreciate when you're talking about a fruited beer, you didn't throw in a couple of strawberries. I mean, there's a big investment in fruit in one of these.
Oh, for sure. To do a beer with this much fruit, some people complain the beers are too expensive and things like that. But, I read an article from Michael Jackson a long time ago. This is in like the 90s, where he just said, make the best beer you can make and charge what you need to charge for it. So I've always had that in the back of my mind. Like, so this beer, we just said, all right, we're not going to go into it with any idea of what we need to charge, what is it going to cost. We're just going to make an unapologetic, the best fruit we can possibly make, best fruit beer. And then we're just going to have to price it what we have to price it. So, some people think it's too expensive, but, with the fruit element and the sour element in wood, so many things can go wrong that, for us, we're putting the beer first and then hoping it speaks for itself. So
Henry's a brewer in our audience. He wanted to know if that was a metric shit ton.
Yeah, I think it is a metric. Yeah, we use metric.
Thank you, Henry. I can count on you, buddy. Okay. I think we're gonna move on. You've got some more questions there, Jason. But okay. Derek, I bet you're getting ready to wet your whistle on your beer. So.
Oh yeah. I may have not waited as long as I should have.
So Jason, I'm going to take you off screen for maybe 5 or 10 minutes or so, and then we'll come back when we come back to the questions for Derek.
Sounds good.
Okay, see you in a minute. Well, thankfully I did that more smoothly than the last time.
All right, very cool.
So how are you doing?
Great. We're really stoked to be here.
All right. Well, let's jump into your beer. I'm going to switch over to the overhead camera, which again, I apologize to everybody. My internet seems to have completely blown out. I will try and zoom in as much as I can, but we'll get through this. I hope the audio at least is okay, and most importantly, that our brewers are good. So we're going to zoom in on the can and see what we can see here. So you want to tell us a little bit about this label, Derek?
Yeah. We do all of the label work of all of our brands, bottles and cans in-house. We like to keep everything pretty clean, but this one was a real fun one for us to just be able to let loose with. It has a great sort of, early 1980s neon science, weird science type of look. I mean, obviously, Rick and Morty is going to be mentioned a pretty good amount when you're bringing up some of this. We also have another one in the series called the Flux Opacitor, because it's an opaque beer. And both of those have just like a really fun sort of, analog, cartoonish sort of science theme. We've always been real proud of our sort of, scientifical, technical prowess used in the beer side. So we always try to sneak that in. But one thing we're really proud of is doing everything in-house so we can spend all the money on hops. And, especially once you're starting to talk about New England style double IPAs, you're knocking on the door of a financially irresponsible beer with the amount of high quality hops that go in it. So anything we can do to keep the price down for the consumers, it's just insane how many hops go into this.
Well, I'm ready to pour mine.
So, Topotronic, Lupulocitor would be how we would pronounce it. But you could probably just say Hopotronic in the tap room. You could just say hop, and we'll give you that beer. Right now, it's sort of our exploratory hop series. We've had a lot of really good luck with our Mountain Haze. That's our single New England style. That's 6.5%. But that we really try to keep just as much the same as possible. You know, hops do adjust a little bit. That's mostly Citra, Idaho 7, and Centennial. And as long as the hops are all staying the same, we're not really messing around with this. But this one we get to just really mess around with. Citra is the prominent hop in it. If anybody's really getting into beer, you'll know Citra is just the most resilient hop. I mean, it's incredible. I'm sure a lot of this massive craft American beer boom, it could be traced back to how unbelievably great Citra is from the Yakima Valley. It's just insanely aromatic. And then we mixed it with a Pink Boots blend. So that's from YCH. And what they're doing is a yearly blend, a lot like the Falconer's Flight blend, if anyone's familiar. They've been doing this for a few years, as far as I know, but maybe longer. And it's sort of a charitable blend that's put together by a group of really great brewers that fly in from all over the country, and they just get a good layout of hops to deal with. I've been watching it for a bit. I think it usually has a lot of experimental hop blends, but this time, this blend in particular for the 2019 hop year is Laurel, Idaho Gem, Azaka, and El Dorado. So the last two are just, really stone fruit heavy. El Dorado especially is just really well known for being real peach and apricot forward, and then just really juicy, really tropical. I mean, a year ago, trying to even put the term juicy anywhere, you're going to get an eye roll from someone. But I mean, when we were canning this, the boss walked in and said it just smelled like we were, packaging juice at Tropicana or something like that. When you're right on the line, you can't really smell it as well. But when you step back about 30 feet, then you really get that huge punch of aroma.
Well, but I think I had almost 4 fingers of head in that guy.
Yeah, that we were really, just like most breweries, we were really, paying a lot of attention to the New England IPA trend, and we were really excited about it. But one thing that we've just really enjoyed at the brewery, even with our barrel-aged strong ales, is a healthy carbonation. We're always really, really worried about dissolved oxygen levels in our packaging, and the higher you get that carbonation, the much more likely to get that really good, what we call cap on foam, just to really knock out all that. So we're probably a lot higher in carbonation than we should be for most cans, but we're really hoping that our cans can send all over the country and still hold up pretty well.
I didn't find it off-puttingly high at all. It seemed to just have a lot of characteristics for the head. It's kind of a seafoam head, but it's still holding up. I've still got, a quarter of an inch of head there.
Great.
Nice aromatics, a little bit of pine, but mostly just citrusy fruits. I can smell that El Dorado. That's one of my favorite hops. That orangey characteristic. But no dankness. I really I expected more dankness, and I'm getting very little dankness, which honestly is a preference for me.
Well, these New England style hazies are awesome. The aromas you get off them are just second to none. There's not any other beer I can think of offhand the style goes. But one thing that a lot of brewers have find themselves sort of pigeonholed is there's really only 6 or 7 that just have that really pure citrus tropical note with nothing else going on. But we've always been a big fan of throwing a little bit of pine, a little bit of the dankness, a little bit of that catty flavor. We put a very small portion of Centennial in our Whirlpool just because these last couple of years of Centennial have been outstanding. And we just really wanted to sort of have a little bit more of a balance, make our own spin. We started off as a Belgian only brewery, but a lot of our Belgian style only brewery, but a lot of our beers were very different. Our quad was pretty dry. Our wit beer was pretty bitter. Didn't have any additions to it. No coriander, which is super classic. So when it was really nice, the owner, the founder, he's also a great brewer himself, and he's not the first person to just look up the BJCP guidelines whenever we're building a beer. We want to sort of make a beer that has a little bit of our own flavor to it, and also one that we're really into drinking. Even if we make the perfect beer and we don't find it ourselves drinking it a lot, that was not a successful beer.
Chris says, I feel like the catty aromas are going away, and I have to agree. They are in my mind.
They are.
When there's so many other wonderful aromas, but this has just enough pine to it. It always reminds me of the pine forests in the Carolinas. We have a lot of those, and I find that a little bit of it I find quite pleasant. Some of the beers can have too much, but this just has kind of a touch of pine on the finish.
That's great. Yeah, aroma is so important in beer in general, and with these styles, that's just number one. The most important, 80% of the beer is aroma, I'm sure. And once you can start linking smell to memory, I mean, you're in the groove. Then you're really starting to get people to get really into a certain beer.
Well, Derek, we've got some questions about the beer. Can we go to that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. I want to bring Jason up on the screen. So, Jason, don't let me surprise you with the camera being turned on.
I'm ready.
There he is.
Okay.
Okay. So the first questions we're going to send mostly to Derek. So let's go through those. Derek, our first question. Have you experimented with Kvike yeast, and what do you think about it, assuming you've used it?
We have used that on a smaller scale. I mean, that was, most of the brewery publications that are floating around my office 6 months ago, that was on the headline of every single one. And, it seems like a great yeast, especially, man, if I started off home brewing and there was a yeast that you could knock out at 75 and take it up to 95 and diacetyl and DMS don't exist at all, I would have never used another yeast in my life. But once you start to get into yeast forward beers, which I'm we're both doing so much of, you start to notice when something's got a really nice flavor, but the yeast is just not doing it any favors at all. I mean, it'll attenuate really well, it'll finish really well, but the actual aromas and mouthfeel and finish, we just haven't done anything right yet. But no, we haven't done anything yet. We also work a lot with French Saison yeast, which at this point, now that we know more, is not terribly far from any souring yeast or anything like that. So we're pretty uptight whenever any other yeast shows up to the brewery. So we're definitely not going to introduce any other ones into our program. We already have 4 yeasts going with our 6 top brands, which is not super smart from a cellaring standpoint, but that's just how we ended up with, and we're happy.
Well, I'm like you. I think it was a great yeast, particularly for home brewers, but I am seeing a lot of commercial brewers starting to use it. So it looks like Steve has the next question for you, and somehow I think you might know Steve. So, Derek, what's the biggest limitation on increasing production to grow your business while maintaining exceptional quality?
Oh, man, that's a great question. I mean, this is just an interesting business in general. You get too big and you don't worry about your quality. You're certainly going to sell your product once. And we always talk about it. People will talk about your beer as well as they want, but until they order another one or buy another 6-pack, nothing matters. So short answer would be another glycol chiller. We're pretty much at maximum capacity right now for just adding tanks and stuff like that. We're doing a pretty good amount of American ales now, which ferment a lot quicker, but they sure do put off a lot more diacetyl. So we weren't really saving as much time as we hoped, because even a 7% IPA is taking about 2 weeks to come out, and then our French Saison takes about 3 weeks. So a lot would have to go into expanding at this point. We're in a pretty comfortable space. We're at about 4,000 barrels. Who knows what we'll be at this year? But we're averaging about 4,000 barrels the last 2 years. And we have 2 other brewers and myself packaging and brewing everything. So we're sort of at that interesting cusp that as soon as we want to sort of grow up to 6 or 8 or 9 or anything like that, we're going to have to really invest in a lot of infrastructure. So what we did instead is we just opened a secondary tap room, a satellite tap room that we're hoping to sort of push a little more beer there, make our margins a little better, because you make a lot more money out of a tap room than when any canned or bottled product. And that's sort of the direction we've been going.
Yeah, that seemed like such a great idea 2 months ago, right?
We just opened that tap room in the beginning of winter. So we've been just itching for this warm weather, and it is just a tease.
Well, I actually, if I can chime in, Doug, I don't want to overspeak, but we've got, your brewery and ours has a lot of interesting overlaps. We're about the same size. We've been about 5,000 barrels for the last 3 years or so, and that's about where we're comfortable. But we also started off being what we call Belgian inspired. And then we've kind of slowly evolved away and done some other types of beers just with trends and things, but that's still what's near and dear to our heart. But it's kind of interesting. I would love to come check your brewery out sometime and have you guys over, if we ever can travel again,
Yeah, exactly. Can't wait to have you guys over here. No, my girlfriend and I do beer trips all the time. Your area is just, there must be something in the water there. There's so many incredible beers coming out of there. I'm looking forward to it too. But yeah, we do have a lot of overlaps. We were very, very Belgian inspired, and it even takes me back to the original beers I loved. Those Belgian beers are shelf stable. I grew up in a real small town. Your Delirium, that was about one of the only beers you could get that was probably at full flavor, and so that was just one of the types of things that just really got me into it too.
And Doug, I don't know about you, Doug, if I can jump in, but
please.
Coming from like a 90s brewer, Belgian beer was always just held in such high regard. There's always some mystery about it, and I always love that aspect because you're always trying to learn about how do they get these flavors out of just yeast and things like that. And I don't know, in your learnings and everything, where you're are you a Belgian beer fan yourself?
I am. Yes. I love the Belgian beers because of the complexity.
Yep.
So, and they're getting increasingly hard to find domestically.
Yeah.
Yep. But I think, it's like a natural evolution. Once you're a brewer and, a home brewer or whatever, those Belgian beers it's just so fascinating. That I think, that when we started our brewery, that's where my mind was wow, I want to always be learning, and I want to always push myself, and I want to try to solve these mysteries of the world that are Belgian beer.
I think it's a more complex beer though, and some of our consumers like things your strawberry beer is strawberry, and there are other strawberry beers that you buy that are not, which I don't think speaks well of our industry. So I think people are challenged sometimes. Can they trust the label, and do they really understand the Belgian beers? We have all these crazy names, or I'd say we do, the Belgians have, that unless you're a Cicerone or BJCP beer judge, you may not understand what's even on the label.
Yeah.
So, But
I think I just really got into Belgian beers with the way he's talking as well. And one thing I really adored is, the especially when you got started, I mean, it's British beers were probably the main American brew pub model, and then German lagers, and then Belgian beers. And British and German beers just have such stringent, focused goals and guidelines. And Belgian beers is just like, well, what area do you live in? What terroir are you going for? Like, each bottle is going to taste differently because of conditioning and aging. It's just, someone's a Bitburger fan and they have a Bitburger that doesn't taste right. They're so upset. But if you're a fan of DuPont or something, it's gonna age, it's gonna evolve, and I think that's just one of the most exciting things.
Well, Lynn notes the highest rated beer in 2019 was a Belgian beer. So. So I wonder what
that was.
Do you think you've answered Steve's question? Because if you hadn't, I'm sure you're going to hear about it.
I hope I did. I mean, we're in a really good place. We just have a single owner, and he's pretty open to making sure that we're not pushing beers too fast. Right now, just letting the beers clean up. At the end of the day is really just the most important thing to us, especially with all our strong ales. It has to be in stainless for 4 weeks before it even gets into a barrel. Otherwise, there's so much darn yeast in it. And so some things slow us down, but maybe those are the things that we might get known for and sort of show through.
Okay. And Derek, one more question, and then we'll get Jason into more of these. Oops, my screen's moved around here. Okay. So Derek, what's your favorite hop for IPAs? Now this is depending on, I know we talked earlier, you said availability, but this is without restriction to availability. Assuming you could get all you wanted and you could afford them, what would be that hop?
Well, without restriction, and most people can hear right now, I mean, Citra is just such a great hop. I mean, everyone's really getting really excited about Matuaka and Enigma and some of these New Zealand ones, but I've been brewing for a real long time, and I'm just nuts about the tried and true. So for me, Cascade hops, especially depending on where we get it, we just got a lot directly from YCH. It might be just one of the most incredible hops I've ever opened up. And you always want to look for resiliency as well when you're putting hoppy beers together. We're actually starting to really lean towards turning into a hop-focused brewery, which coming from a Belgian-focused brewery, we only had Willamette and maybe a small portion of some bittering hops in-house for 5 years. So we're still trying to figure out what you can get, what the price points are. But as far as availability and cost, I mean, Cascade is the reason that we're all here right now. You'd be hard pressed to find many brewers at all at my age or above or below that aren't going to quote Sierra Nevada Pale Ale as like their aha beer. And that's just sort of the epitome of that beautiful grapefruit, citrus, pine, spruce, everything you can think of, just really well balanced. The alpha acids are really nice and subdued too. A lot of these new hops
now you've done it. We have the brewer from Sierra Nevada in our chat. And so he had a comment there that he was very appreciative of.
Yeah. And as consistent as you could ever be. Brewers always talk, did that beer change or did my taste change? Especially with older beers, and that beer is as good as it's ever been. I had a big grip of them about 2 weeks ago. They were delightful.
Okay, Jason, we're gonna bring you back on camera. You look like you had a distraction there.
I did. Had a little chaos. At home.
Okay. Well, I knew you did, but we've got some questions for you if you are ready for some.
Sure.
All right. So first one from you, Rudy asked this one. Jason, can you describe your process for infusing different fruits into your beer for best effect?
Well, I'm not sure if that if that's coming from like a home brew standpoint, but one of the nice things about being a professional brewer is we have a lot of nice toys. So for us, what we've done, I think it's kind of proven, the later in the process you add the fruit, the more fruity it is. One of the issues when you add fruit during the fermentation standpoint is all the sweetness ferments out and you're left with kind of like the essence of fruit. But if you think about what, when people taste fruit, what are they thinking of? One of the aspects is sweetness. So it's always been a challenge of how can you add or make a fruity beer that tastes fruity? It has to have some residual sweetness. So, the advantage that we have, I guess, is that we have this sterile filter that we can sterile filter our beer before we add the fruit. So then we don't have to be concerned about that re-fermentation in the package. So some of that, raw fruit flavor can stay in the beer. So I guess my advice would be to add it late in the process, but, also understanding that, depending on what your purpose is professionally or homebrew wise, that you may have some sugar in a bottle or whatever it might be that can re-ferment. So that's the trick, I guess. So adding fruit late in the process gives you a fruitier beer, but you just have to know what you're getting yourself into, I guess.
And apparently a metric shit ton of it.
Yeah. And if you go with the metric shit ton,
I'm quoting
more
that
sugar.
Now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Rudy, thank you. That was a great question. I think this one's along the same line. And Rudy says, thank you, Jason. Anthony has the same question, and I'm pretty sure it's for you, Jason. What is the approximate pound per barrel for strawberry fruit to beer? And is fruit puree or whole fruit?
We use it. We've used whole fruit before, but fruit puree, I believe, is better. What would happen when we used whole fruit is that we would lose so much volume with the material itself would soak beer. So you'd have at the bottom of this tank, we'd lose like a third of the beer just in the strawberry, I don't know, what do you call it? Strawberry carcass and rhubarb, stalks that, unless you have specialized equipment to pull that out, we were just losing so much beer that we finally got to the point where the puree was actually better for us because our yield went way up, and we think we get a fruitier beer from that. So, we started off as a farmhouse brewery with dreams of growing all of our own stuff and things like that. But when you are doing a professional batch of beer, those purees actually I think are a better fit. So.
Well, I like that. I'm fascinated with that too, because it does. One thing I heard in brewing meads was it starts with the quality of the ingredients, and a lot of them, and I think it's true on all beverages.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
This mead maker was telling me he was getting his fruit from Germany because that was really the only fruit that he could find that would meet the specifications. So he was getting in 55-gallon drums of it. So
wow, yeah. We always try to source fruit as local as possible if we can.
I think he tried also, he also had to get his honey from Brazil because he just couldn't get the quality he wanted domestically. So anyway, it just goes to show that flavorful, delicious beers require a wise brewer, a good recipe, but fine ingredients, and that is something that drives the cost up.
Yeah.
It does.
All right, good question, Anthony. Chris has the next most popular question. Jason, this one goes to you.
Okay.
What are some of your favorite breweries in Beer City, USA, i.e. Grand Rapids, Michigan? And Derek will come to you for the same question right afterwards. So be thinking about your answer.
Cool.
Oh man, I've got.
Uh-oh. It looks like we have lost Jason. And so he's not the only one with a bad internet tonight. So Derek, you're up, buddy.
Yeah. Throw that question my way one more time.
Okay. What are your favorite breweries in Denver?
Oh, wow.
Besides your own.
But yeah, I'm pretty bad about hyping up my own brewery sometimes. So yes, love River North. It's going to be hard to detach how close of friends I am with some of the brewers here, but right off the bat, Hogshead Brewery is making just some of the highest quality English style ales, cask ales, real true tried and true session ales that brewers like myself just love to drink after a day of work and not have to worry about what type of hops are in it and if it's made correctly, because yes, it is. And so that's one of my favorite spots. We have Bierstadt Lager House. We're really, really blessed to have such an unbelievable lager producer. Just in fact, right in our neighborhood, in the River North neighborhood, Bill and Ashley are just doing God's work over there with pale lagers, and they're just doing great stuff. And then I have to mention our mutual friend. We opened up in the same neighborhood so many years ago, around 2012. And, they would come over our place and have some beers after some hard days. And we'd go there and have some beers after some hard days. And we've both shifted a lot in our process. But, oh, man, OMF or our mutual friend, they're making some really good stuff over there. I think you can just get their stuff in the tap room right now. But some cans will probably be floating around in the near future. I'm looking forward to getting some of those.
So Hop Barley mentions Bierstadt Lager House.
Yeah, Bierstadt Lager House. So that's the lager producers I mentioned before. Bierstadt. They're just doing really traditional stuff, and it's very technique forward. They're using the exact same hops and malt as everyone else, but I think they're just adding something else extra into it. Know-how would be what I'd say, but love drinking there too. So those are my three top favorite, but I love them all. Comrade, D-Bolt, they're all excellent.
Well, we may have to come back to Jason on that one. He looks like he's having trouble reconnecting. So Derek, we're going to concentrate on you. You're up, buddy. You're you're going to be answering all the rest of them if Jason can't get on the internet.
I was born for this. That's a bummer, though. Jason's a cool guy.
You were born for this. Jason, we hope we can see you in a minute. We're looking forward to it. So the next question for you, Derek, what's your favorite beer your brewery makes? Your favorite beer that your brewery makes?
Colorado IPA. That's a West Coast IPA. Brewers are always a little bit hazy when it comes to actual IBU numbers, but I'm thinking it's just around 60. So it's a really drinkable IPA. It's really heavy Azacca, really heavy Amarillo, really heavy Cascade. I just think those three. Amarillo is another hop I'm pretty obsessed with right now, especially the last few crop years have been okay. This most recent one is out of this world. The type of hop that would have exploded the American craft beer scene 10 years ago. So I'm really excited about that, and it's just really drinkable. We have a Pilsner too that I love drinking, but it takes so darn long to make and sell so quick that it doesn't make its way into our fridge as much as I'd like it to. Other than, as opposed to the Colorado that only takes about 2.5 weeks, Pilsner takes about 6.5 weeks, and so I just have a lot more options, a lot more ability to drink that Colorado.
Well, I like that. You're making me thirsty. I'm going to polish these delicious beers.
It's nice and dry.
Rudy has the next question, and this ought to be one you'll like. What would you please share your favorite Belgian brewery?
That's a tough one. I would absolutely have to say De La Seine brewery, just because Terra Bublas, if I'm saying that correctly, is just the most drinkable beer I think I've ever had outside of, a real crisp Pilsner Kel or Bitburger. I mean, it's just the most distinctive yeast character. That's one of the Belgian style beers that really got me into beer in general. I've always liked solving problems, and sometimes you get those Belgian beers and you just have no idea what's going on there and how they get there and what character they're using. And, we're all talking about the lupulin threshold so much these days and how bitter and hoppy beers get. But that was really bitter at the time for a Belgian beer at probably 30 IBUs. And I just remember how well that balanced everything. And that blew my mind.
I think it's especially difficult, don't you think, Derek? Because each brewery kind of has their own special beers and the different styles. And there's it's not one Belgian brewery that knocks it out of the park on all the various styles. So
very true.
But I would love to know, is there one in the USA that you like, domestic brewery that you think is just really good with their Belgian beers?
Oh, well, Allagash.
Yeah.
I mean, that's especially being I'm originally from the East Coast, so that was a very available beer, white when it was available in 750s. And they're really classic when you talk about sort of a brewery that uses yeast as their main thing. You talk about other beers, Bell's, obviously, malt is their total, they're everything about them. For a hoppy breweries, there's thousands, but Green Flash, that's their whole flavor component. And then it was just really great to get into Allagash. They're using such clean flavors, but probably using so many different yeasts to get to them. That was really eye-opening too.
Derek, Henry is asking about, so he'd love to get more details on your favorite brewery, Belgian brewery.
Yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot on sharing your email address, but is there a way that Henry can get in touch with you?
Yeah, honestly, first off, I forgot to call it Brasserie de la Seine if anyone's trying to Google it. But yeah, you can get a hold of me at Derek at rivernorthbrewery.com, DREK.
Would you type it in the chat? Is your keyboard nearby? Can you type it in the chat?
Yeah, I can type that. We always like to joke, if you want to get a hold of anyone at the brewery and you want to talk to the owner or head brewer, just put their name at thebrewery.com or whatever brewery.com, and they obviously got the first handle. We currently have 9 employees. 6 of them are Matts. So but you can guarantee.
That in, we'll ask Jason the same question. So Jason, I'm sorry, apparently your internet is as bad as mine, or at least at a moment there.
It was a rookie mistake. It was power problem.
Oh,
yeah, I lost power. Sorry.
Oh, well, you're back. And so the question on the table is your favorite Belgian brewery. And so it has sparked quite a lot of conversation, and didn't know if you had one off the top of your head.
Oh, wow. The Saison DuPont obviously is like just classic, and that's one that I've fallen in love with over and over again. And man, I could just go through all sorts of Belgian beers, but that's probably the one that is probably nearest and dearest to my heart, beer wise. So.
Okay. All right. We are just about done. And for those that have only allocated an hour, we will be wrapping this up in just a moment. Chris says Saison DuPont scored a 96 in Beer Connoisseur. So a lot of other people agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah. So Beer Connoisseur is doing things right then.
There's this brewery, like when we visited Belgium before we started our brewery, we visited France and Belgium, and there's this brewery called Charmoy that, I don't think it's available outside anywhere. It's actually in France, but the closest brewery that they have to collaborate with, if they run out of yeast or or grains or whatever is Orval. So I met this young brewer there, and that beer inspired our beer called Farmhand, which is our best-selling beer. So that's another one that people probably don't know, but that is another just amazing brewery on a 300-year-old estate. If people can find that beer, that is amazing. Charmoy, what was it? ARMOY.
Don't ask me to spell it. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Chris has got it.
There we
Look
go.
there in the chat. Does that look right?
Yeah, I think that looks right. I thought it was actually with a Y, but that was a couple beers ago. But
thank you so much. Aaron says Saison DuPont is one of his favorites also, and I know he has a lot of expertise. So that brings us to our last question, which, Jason, it looks like Lucas has focused it on you. But if you have an answer to it, Derek, we'd love to hear you also. So the question, Jason, can you address your Braille Pale Ale as a collaboration for the local art scene and disability community?
Awesome. Yeah, we partnered. We have something in Grand Rapids called Art Prize, where it's a huge public art display. It's now every other year. It used to be every year, but through some partnerships, we wanted to try to do something with focusing on awareness of disabilities. So our label supplier was able to do Braille on cans. So all our broadleaf local beer, which is basically where we do our hazy IPAs and beers that don't fit the tradition of what we've kind of built up at Brewery Vivant, where we do all those beers and all those labels have Braille on the can. So it's actually real Braille that says what the beer is. So people in the blind community can actually read what those beers are. But it also secondarily adds a real nice aesthetic to the label, which is kind of nice. So we don't have any on the Straw Barb label, but our alternate brand, broadleaf local beer, we always do the Braille, and it's been kind of a fun exploration.
Well, I noticed the text on the can actually was in relief, so I thought it might actually be there.
Yeah, we like the kind of the tactile feel of some of these labels, and it's kind of fun to play around with those things. And some of these printers can really do some amazing things. So the Braille being something specific, but you definitely wouldn't miss it because it's definitely those raised dots on there that we've incorporated into the artwork. So it's beautiful, whether you pick up on what it is all about or not. But it's also been we've gotten a big thank you from the blind community as well, and we've done a couple tours and things like that, and they're just so excited to actually have a beer can they can read, and that's been a lot of fun.
That is such a great story, and what a great last question. And Derek, I don't want to put you on the spot because you might not have been prepared for a question like that, but are you doing anything for anyone disadvantaged in any way at your brewery?
No, but all you need is a spark of inspiration. That's one of the cooler things I've heard in a long time. So definitely going to throw that by the meeting, and that's really awesome. Actually, love hearing that.
Well, the last question I want to ask the audience now, other than I probably need to get a better internet provider. And frankly, it has worked great all day. So my apologies, but probably my appearance has improved as a result of all this pixelization. So you're not missing anything except the beautiful beers that I've been drinking. But we're trying to figure out, as everybody knows, this was a pilot 3 episodes, and we're real interested in what night of the week, or I presume day is not a good option. We've been doing these on Friday nights during the quarantine, but we realized Friday nights may be difficult to maintain. So if you don't mind, type into the chat there if there's a night of the week that you prefer. I've had it in the polls, but it looks like nobody likes Tuesday night or Wednesday night, and we've been doing Friday night, so it doesn't leave too many others. And I have kind of a commitment on Thursday nights, at least for a while. So let us know maybe what's a good time for those of you that are on there. Just type it in the chat. You don't have to put it in the poll. If you just put down one night of the week, that would really help me as we wrap up. So as we're wrapping up, and we will start with you, Jason, since you were offline for just a few minutes. Is there something coming up on your brewery that we ought to know, especially as we hope quarantines are beginning to be lifted? Is anything anybody can look forward to? I know that I saw there in the chat that at least Hop Barley, I think, might have made a trip to your brewery.
Oh, cool. Yeah, it's really hard to know when we'll actually open to the public again. We're continuing to work on our innovation. So if you like this straw bar beer, the next iteration of that is a cherry apricot, and then we'll have one more in the late fall, early winter. And then we're also playing around. We've done a lot with hazy IPAs. Under the Vivant name, kind of quietly, but more, more in our alternate, the broadleaf local beer scene. But we have this beer we did called Farmer's Hat that we're going to bring back, and Tavour is going to pick up the cherry apricot and the Farmer's Hat, which is a hazy IPA. So you can kind of see what that looks like in our interpretation as well, and we're kind of excited to get those out there. And it's nice to have that commitment. And we just love sharing beer. We're typically just a Michigan-only distribution footprint. So that opportunity to share beer in a wider audience, we just love that. And so maybe your audience, if they like this straw bar beer, maybe look at, keep your eye open for those other beers coming out, because I think those will probably hit that same Tavour footprint. So.
Well, you had a lot of questions. I didn't know if there was an email address that you could type in the chat and maybe share if somebody had some follow-up questions. Doesn't have to be your email address. Maybe it
all ends up coming back to me anyway. I mean, we're small, and Derek cracked the code, my first name at breweryvivant.com.
Sorry, I did that.
How it works. So I'll type it in there, but people are more welcome to email me there, and I'll put that in there right now.
Well, and Derek, while you're thinking a second, because I want to ask you the same question, I just want to comment on these beers. Now, these have been out almost an hour, and I think that's the true test of a beer. And getting a lot of the pine has disappeared, Derek, from your beer, but I still get a nice fruitiness and a little bit of maltiness in the background. And on the strawberry Barb, it is just strawberries. I mean, it's like a bowl of strawberries. That is just, I couldn't be more impressed with that strawberry beer. And I like your double IPA, Derek. I'm not throwing off on that. But I agree with a lot of people in the audience. The strawberry beers are very difficult to brew. So, Derek, tell us what's going on at your brewery, as best anybody can guess that it is during the quarantine.
Yeah, well, we're really moving forward with a lot of our barrel program right now. We have a good amount of rum barrel aged beers that are coming out. We're just about to send another round to Tavour of rum barrel aged Sandman. That's our imperial stout with fresh cinnamon and vanilla in it. And so that'll be really nice. Our barrel program is probably everybody's favorite thing, but then occasionally you're not able to just taste them as much as you want, and the blends come together. You put a lot of effort into them, but these days it's really fun to be able to taste them so often and really mess around with blends. So a lot of barrel-aged beers is our next thing, but we actually have a pretty huge space up north in our River North production facility, and then have a pretty good event-sized space at our Blake Street tap room. So whenever tap rooms start opening up, no matter how they look, we're planning on being able to give people a good amount of space and good amount of options and stuff. But as far as what's going on, who knows? We got a lot of good hoppy beers coming out. We're really proud of our white ale. That seems to be really moving a good amount as well. And just trying to ride the wave. It's every week we find out something new.
All right. Well, I think as everybody knows, this was a little bit of a pilot series. These first three, we're going to try and figure out what's the best night of the week to do it. We're also working on a podcast that we will make as part of the live stream. So we'll be sending that out to everybody in the audience. Would love to get your feedback. As everybody knows, I'm very audience driven. I really want programming that the audience wants. So I look forward to your comments. It looks like it's kind of mixed on the days of the week, and I've kind of learned that with calendars. Everybody has an opinion on a date. So we will have to pick a new date. I don't know that it will be Friday, but hopefully it's one that will work for you, or it could actually be floating, kind of depending on what the brewer wants. So we look forward to everybody joining in on the next one, probably about a 2-week break before we do the next one. And Derek, any last words you'd like to just share with the audience as we wrap up?
Yeah. Dad, how's it going? Courtney, good to see you. And I want to shout out to everyone that's been supporting River North this long. And man, it's been a real fun ride, and it's awesome. We get to make beers we like drinking, and people like drinking them with us. So shout out to all the Matts at River North right now. You guys are all the best. And Katie over at Blake Street. So. All
right. And Jason, same question for you. Any last words on for your time?
Well, I mean, we're really focused on our local community. So, we've been getting some really, really good support from our community for, picking up food and beer. And that's really kept us going, during this kind of tough time. And we're trying to figure out what, the next month, what the next 6 months looks like. But, we're going to just kind of try what we're proud and keep making great beer. And if people keep supporting us that way, that'd be great. The relationship with Tavour is amazing because it allows us to share beer in a wider audience than we normally would. So, I hope to keep that going as well. So I guess I just ask if people like Straw Barb, go on Untappd and rank it. That helps us. That helps Tavour see what's important to people. And if you get a chance to try our other beers, that stuff goes a long ways. I think the world of craft beer is going to look a lot different 6 months from now. And, so many unknowns, but if people support the beer in their community, that's, I think that's the biggest compliment anyone could have. So,
in the audience loved everything. Chris says, best of luck. Rudy says, thanks, everyone. Stay well. Hop Barley said, this has been great. I hope it continues. We'll participate as often as we can. Keep up the great work, guys. Thanks. My bros in Colorado stops and drops off a lot of coin for your beer.
I appreciate that.
This has been a lot of fun, and we look forward to the next programming. Meanwhile, I hope everybody stays well. I hope everybody can deal with this crisis as best they can. The internet has kind of proven things are still not anywhere close to normal yet. So I just wish everybody the best. Thank you for spending time with us this evening, and we'll let you know when we restart this series. So, gentlemen, appreciate everything. And
that sounds great. Great to meet you. Great to meet you, Jason. I'll see you in Denver soon.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good. Awesome.